Welcome back, I'm George, and in this video I'm going to show you the first 50 things you need to do on your new iPhone 17 or 17 Pro. I have customization settings, I have improvements for your user experience, and of course I have lots of interesting features that are disabled by default, and that will make your new phone feel and be 10 times better. Now, that being said, and without further ado, let's begin with the first thing you always need to do on a new iPhone, which is to come to the settings, to the main settings page, then swipe down to General, and right here on About, tap on Name, because as you can see right here, you can name your phone anything you want. In my case, I named it Brad Pitt because I can. But that being said, I highly advise to not name the phone anything too crazy, because this is the name that everybody is going to see when you share data through iCloud or when you connect to other devices. So yeah, you can be funny, but not too funny. But anyways, that being said, I believe the second thing you always need to do on a new iPhone is to customize the liquid glass, because by default, as many of you know, the new iPhones have a liquid glass design that gives you a transparent, glassy look. And that, as you can see right here, is not always the best in terms of readability. So some people like to disable it or customize it so it gives you more readability and it's more comfortable to use. First, if you come right here to the settings and you swipe down to the display and brightness section, you'll find a new menu called Liquid Glass. And right here, there is going to be two different options. First of all, we have Clear, which is the default one you'll have on your phone, and that, as you can see, is not the best in terms of readability. It almost has to darken out the whole background so you can read your notifications. And then you have also here on the Liquid Glass menu an option called Tinted, which was introduced with iOS 26.1. In this case, as you can see, it kind of goes back to the previous iOS 18 design, where you have a much more noticeable background blur so you can see the text properly. Although, of course, it is also way less liquid glassy than the other one. But in my opinion, this is better because at the end of the day, first is first, you need to be able to read what's on your phone before we think of design. And well, if you really, really hate the liquid glass design, there is also another option that completely gets rid of any liquidy glassiness on your phone. But in this case, we have to go to Accessibility, then tap on Display, and then right here, tap on Reduce Transparency. And as you can see, in this case, you can already see it on the app library. It completely deletes any sort of glossy transparencies on the phone, like the name suggests. Of course, this is going to be a lot more boring, but it is going to be way more functional if what you care for is simply, reading what's on the display properly. Now, once that's done, I believe the third most important thing you need to do is to save as much battery life as possible, and there are plenty ways to do that. First of all, if we swipe down to General and swipe down to Background App Refresh, you'll see a full list with every single app you have on your phone that is updating in the background. Of course, for an app to update in the background, it needs resources, it needs, to be connected to the internet, and of course, it burns more battery life. So the least amount of apps you have turned on, the better for your battery life. In my case, I can already see a couple apps that should not be turned on because I don't use them or because they don't necessarily need to be updating in the background. In fact, if you're like me and have a bunch of apps, like between 50 and 100 in my case, I think you're going to see a very big increase in battery life when disabling everything you don't need. Now, that being said, and more in that vein, if we swipe back to the main settings page and then swipe down to the notifications page, you'll also see a full list right here with every single app that has the ability to send notifications to your phone. And much like with Background App Refresh, the least amount of apps you have turned on, the better for your battery life. So in this case, I also recommend you come here and disable every app that you don't need to be sending notifications, which in my case is a pretty long list of apps. As you can see, I have a bunch of apps turned off already because I've already done this process before. But if you haven't, you probably have every single app turned on because that's what they do by default. And trust me when I tell you, that is burning a lot of unnecessary battery life on your phone. Now, that being said, let's swipe back once again to the main settings page and then swipe down to sounds and haptics. If you come here and swipe all the way down to system haptics, you'll be able to completely turn them off with a tap. If you do this, the phone is going to stop making those little vibrations that you notice when you tap on something when a notification comes in, because those little vibrations, believe it or not, cost you a lot of battery life. In this case, to be able to make those vibrations, there has to be a lot of little engines inside of the phone that activate with different patterns and different intensities, so you can notice those very satisfying little vibrations that show up depending on what you're doing. Now, of course, if you really love those little vibrations, you can still turn it on. Of course, you bought the phone, you want to enjoy it. But if you don't really care for the vibrations, I highly recommend you turn it off because you are going to see a noticeable bump in battery life. And well, of course, if we swipe once again to the main settings page and we tap right here on battery, we will be able to customize the main battery settings on the phone, which also affect your battery life. So first of all, if you swipe down to battery health, you'll be able to see, the main stats of your battery, in this case, the capacity, which is still at 100%, and the charging cycles, which are a big deal. If you bought this phone brand new, it should have 0. And if you've been using it for a couple weeks, it should have like 18, 20, 30, a very low amount. As you can see, you can also check the manufacturing date and the first use date, very useful information. And if you swipe back here to the main battery settings, you can also tap on charging to customize the amount of charge you let the phone have, which of course, it may seem a little strange. You would want your phone to charge up to 100 so you can get as much battery life as possible. But believe it or not, charging the phone up to 100 is actually hurting your battery and making it lose capacity over time. So I highly, highly recommend you set it at 90 or 85% ideally, so the battery doesn't stress as much and it can last a much longer time. Now, of course, if you're planning to use this phone for just a year until the new one comes out, then you don't have to do this. But if you're planning on using it for a couple of years, then it is a really, really good idea to set it to 90 or 85 so you can get as much battery life as possible, not just now, but in 3 to 4 years when you still want to use your phone and have a good experience. And well, also here on the main battery settings, if we tap on power mode, you will see that we have a new mode called adaptive power. In this case, this is going to regulate the capacity of the processor depending on what you're doing to get as much battery life as possible. This essentially comes turned on by default, and I don't recommend you turn it off because it essentially is more battery life without having to do much of anything. So yeah, it is a great thing to have and a really good replacement for the low power mode, which essentially always limited the processor to, I think, 70 or 60%. In this case, this is much better because it adapts the processor depending on what you're doing, so you don't really notice. And well, also very interesting, here on the main battery settings, you have the option to enable the battery percentage. This is going to be turned off by default, so you will not be able to see how much battery life you have left. And well, I highly recommend you turn it on because I believe it is pretty useful information to know how much battery you have on the phone. But anyways, that being said, and before we move on, I actually have something for you watching this video. This is the new Sunset California series case from Pitaka. It has a really cool 80s retro aesthetic, as you can see, and it comes in 5 different shades, so you can match it to your iPhone color. It is also very slim, with less than 1.2 millimeters and 25 grams, adding almost no extra weight or volume. As you can see, it covers the action button on the iPhone, which may be a concern, but as you can see, it lets you control the button using the case, so you get the added protection without any compromise. It is also really premium, with a metal camera ring and a modular structure letting you add a card holder, a battery bank, or a ring using the MagSafe connector on the back. Now, my favorite thing about this case is the texture. This case uses aramid fiber, which allows it to be very smooth, but at the same time, it provides a really good grip so it doesn't slip out of your hands. You'll find a link down below in the description to get the case, and if you want the latest style, such as the one that I'm using, it is exclusively available on their website with a 10% discount as well. Thank you, Pitaka, for sponsoring this video. But anyways, that said, let's now get back to the iPhone 17 because there is a lot more to cover. Next up, let's tap right here on the Settings app and swipe down to the Face ID and passcode settings. Of course, it is going to ask for your passcode. There we go. And once you're inside, you'll be able to control a lot of very useful settings for your safety when using the iPhone. So first of all, let's tap right here on Change Passcode. In this case, you don't really have to do this. It's just for demo. Let's add a random new one. There we go. 111111. Because as you can see, when we change the passcode, we will still be able to use the old password for 72 hours essentially, like you can see right here, to reset your password if you forget the new one. And well, I believe this is incredibly dangerous because when you change your passcode, it's mostly when you think it's not safe anymore to use that old passcode. So essentially, being able to use that passcode to change your passcode is not the safest thing in the world. So bottom line, when you change your passcode, I recommend you tap right here on Expire Previous Passcode Now, tap on Expire Now, and automatically you'll only be able to use the new one, adding a lot more safety to your iPhone. And well, also here on the Face ID settings, a little bit below, you'll see the settings that control the access when the phone is locked to a set of different features. In this case, these are the right settings I believe you should turn on or off, but I'm going to turn all of them on so we can check them out one by one. So first of all, let's touch on Today View and Search. This would be, of course, your Spotlight search that allows you to check every single app or document that's on the phone. It is not really safe to enable this when the phone is locked. And your Today View is this menu right here that allows you to see your widgets. Now, in my case, there's not a lot of personal information, but sometimes people have their photos, their notes, their documents here, and it's also not really safe to have this turned on when the phone is locked. So I suggest you turn this off so it is only accessible once you've included your Face ID. Now for your notifications, I highly recommend you turn it off. I think your notifications can contain a lot of personal data like phone calls, messages, and stuff like that. So I also like to turn it off. Control Center, I don't think you have to turn it off because you can only control basic things like the brightness and the volume and connectivity. It is not a big deal to have it turned on. Then also for your lock screen widgets, I personally have it turned on because in my case, it only shows the weather and my steps. But in your case, if you have a personal widget with personal information, well, then I think it's better to turn it off. Then for live activities, I generally leave it on because it is just going to show your timer or your delivery service, your Uber right here on the dynamic island. It is not very dangerous to have it turned on. Then you have Siri right here, which is kind of dangerous to have turned on. Of course, when this feature is enabled, you'll be able to access Siri from the lock screen, which doesn't necessarily mean it is dangerous because this version of Siri is way more limited than the one you have when the phone is unlocked. But in the past, people have... Shut up, Siri, please. Okay. In the past, people have been able to breach the security of the phone, accessing it through the lock screen. So personally, I don't like to turn it on. So let's turn it off. I also highly suggest you turn off reply with message. You don't want people that don't have access to your phone replying to your messages. Then if you have HomeKit accessories, I also suggest you turn this off because theoretically, if you have things connected to your phone through HomeKit and you have this on, people that can grab your phone without unlocking it could open your garage door, turn on your blinds, turn on your whatever accessories you have at home. So yeah, especially if doors can open through HomeKit, you want to turn this off. Then for return missed calls, I think you should turn it off for added safety. And for workout health data, I believe it is better to turn it on because most of the time when you're working out, the phone is locked. So this way you can still keep gathering data about the workout. And well, also down here at the bottom, you have this option called erase data. This, I think, is for people that have very, very, very sensitive data on their device. Essentially, when you turn it on, the phone is going to give you 10 attempts to unlock. And after that, it is going to wipe all the data that's on the device. I believe this is very dangerous, once again, especially for those of you who have little kids or siblings. And it actually only makes sense for people like maybe a president or someone that has really sensitive data that cannot be leaked. In that case, well, you can turn it on. But for everybody else, if you're a normal person with normal data on your phone, leave it off just in case. But anyways, that being said, let's now move on to home screen customization, which happens to be one of the main headline features of the new iPhones and of iOS 26. So first of all, if we tap and hold right here and then tap on Edit, we can see a new page called Customize. This is essentially going to let you change the look of your icons on the home screen. So first of all, we have the default look, which is the one we've been seeing for a very, very long time. Then we have the dark mode, which is going to turn everything into a darker, well, color or tone. Every light surface is going to be dark now. Then you can also tap on clear, which is going to make every icon look transparent, adding to the liquid glass design language. Although in this case, it is a lot less readable because, well, it is transparent, so it's harder to see. Now that said, Apple, of course, thought of the readability issue and also introduced a dark mode setting. So right here, as you can see, by default, it is on light, but you can set it to dark. And well, you are going to gain more readability by making things more contrasty or dark as opposed to the background. And well, we also have the infamous tinted section where we can tint the icons any color we want. Although it is, as you can see right here, not the most aesthetic thing in the world. And in this case, it is also a little buggy because it's only tinted, well, now it's fixed. It's now tinted every single app. But once again, it is not the most aesthetic thing in the world. That being said, though, Apple has also introduced new modes right here, so you can try to make it as good looking as possible. So first of all, you can match it to the wallpaper. So the color of the icons is the same as the wallpaper behind. And you can also tap right here to select a specific color from that wallpaper to tint your icons that way. And well, this of course is going to look much better because it matches the color behind and it feels more well-rounded. But I still believe nothing beats the classic light mode or the dark mode, which I also think looks pretty cool. Now, that being said, my favorite customization feature for the icons is this one right here. If you tap on this button on the top right, there we go, you'll be able to make every icon a little bit bigger and delete the text below, making it look a lot cleaner and professional as opposed to the classic look. Now, the only issue, of course, is that if you don't remember what each app is, this can be a little messy. But I believe for most people that have been using an iPhone for a while, you essentially know what each one of these icons is, so you don't really need to see the text below. Now, that said, another really cool customization feature for the home screen is that you can lock apps so only you can access those apps. In this case, you just have to tap and hold, then tap on Require Face ID, tap on Require Face ID, and automatically that specific app will not open unless you use your Face ID or your face. There we go. Let's try it again. And automatically it opens because I looked at the phone. This is very, very useful for people that have little kids or, well, something very private on a specific app they don't want other people to see. So you can comfortably let other people use your phone, knowing they will never be able to access those apps or that information. And well, if you want to revert the changes, you just have to tap and hold, then tap on Don't Require Face ID, and automatically the app will be open to use once again for every single person that has access to your phone. Now, that said, what's probably the main headline feature for the new iPhones is that you can place any icon anywhere you want on the home screen. So in this case, let's tap on this one right here. Let's shake it a little bit so we can activate the wiggle mode, and let's place it right here at the bottom. As you can see, the icon is going to stay there. It is not going to magnetize back in place, so you can have a lot more freedom in customizing the way the phone looks. But anyways, that being said, let's now swipe down to access the notifications page, and then tap anywhere we want on an empty space to access the collections page, which is where we can select a specific wallpaper for the lock screen and the home screen. And well, also we can customize the different widgets and information we can see. So as I said, by default, you'll see your current wallpapers you have selected on your phone. But if we swipe all the way to the right, there we go, we can tap on plus and select a completely new wallpaper to customize. As you can see, we have the classic featured wallpapers from Apple, or the default wallpapers that come pre-installed on the phone. And in this case, as you can see, it is a very, very long list of options. With many, we have different tones and colors to choose. But of course, you can always swipe all the way up and select one of your photos, which is what most people are going to want to do. In this case, as you can see, I've selected this image right here, but the customization has only started. There is a lot more things to do. So first of all, you can tap right here on the time to change the information that's displayed up top. In this case, by default, we have the time, but you can also select the weather, calendar, activity informations, and well, information from every other app you have on your phone. There is not every other app, but a very long list of apps on your phone. Then below, we have the time, which we can customize the font, the density of that font. We can change the color. This is very default basic information that we could also change before. But brand new with iOS 26 is the option to change the size of the text. So you can make it bigger to fill up more space on the lock screen, giving the phone, at least in my opinion, a much better, cleaner look. And well, also new with iOS 26, and this is something a lot of people are going to miss. If you tap right here, the phone is going to create a 3D version of that wallpaper and automatically use it on the lock screen. So as you can see, there is a of course it was not taken in 3D, but the phone has used some AI tricks to make it 3D. In my opinion, this is one of the coolest things on the phone. This makes wallpapers look alive now, and I think it's really, really cool that we finally have this option on the iPhone. Now, a little bit below, as you can see, we have the widget menu where we can select 2 big widgets or 4 different small squared widgets that display information from every single app you have on your phone. Although I have to warn you, not every single app has designed widgets for the lock screen. So some of these apps are going to have designed widgets like this one right here that show specific information. Let's delete this one. There we go. So we can add the pedometer one, but there is also other apps that don't have a specific widget for your lock screen. So you probably won't see every single app on your phone right here on the widgets page. And well, also one of my favorite customization features, you can also change the quick toggles right here at the bottom. So by default, for a very long time, we've had the torch and the camera, but now you can delete these two, there we go, and replace them for a very long list of options, including shortcuts. So you could theoretically open your garage door using a shortcut on your iPhone, which is really, really cool. And well, for reference, every single shortcut we have for the control center is going to be available as a quick toggle. Yeah, a very long list of options for the quick toggles at the bottom, although I actually like the default ones, the torch and the camera, so those are the ones that I'm going to use. Now, that said, once all of the customization is done, we can tap on Add. Then it's going to let us customize the home screen. In this case, it is selecting a blurred background by default. We can take it out, and we can even replace the image for a flat color or a gradient or even another picture from the gallery. Once it's done, we can finally tap on Done. There we go. And we will have a new set of wallpaper home screen design ready to be used. Although, quick warning, this is going to reset your home screen settings. So if you had big icons or colored icons, you'll have to come once again here to customize and include the design changes you've made all over again, because those are specific to each wallpaper on the phone. But anyways, that being said, let's now move on back here to the main settings page, swipe down to display and brightness, and change a couple display settings on your phone. First of all, as you can see, you have the option to change between light mode and dark mode, which is also going to save a little bit of battery life because it consumes less energy. Of course, you can also change the text size and make it bold so it's more readable. You can enable True Tone, which I always recommend. As you can see, it is going to change the colors of the display to adjust them to the environment so the phone is easier to read. And you also have a very underrated feature called Night Shift. When you turn it on, as you can see, the entire display is going to turn yellow, which doesn't really make sense at first glance, but it is actually a great way to help you fall asleep at night. What the phone is doing here is it's canceling the blue light on the device so it doesn't interfere with your circadian rhythms. I know it sounds a little weird, but trust me, using your phone at night with a lot of blue light is really bad for your brain because it thinks it's daytime, and that's why you have a hard time falling asleep. So try this and see if it helps. In my case, it's been really, really helpful. Now, also here on the main display settings, by the way, this is going to be available for the iPhone 17 Pro and the normal 17, you have the always on display functionality. Now, by default, you'll see that all the options are turned on, so you essentially have a very information-dense always on display with your wallpaper, your time, your notifications, your widgets, everything is available. But I found, especially with the wallpaper, this burns a lot of battery life. So my suggestion is that you turn off all of these options right here at the top, and you get the basic time, date, and widgets right here without any notifications or without any wallpaper. That being said though, this is not supposed to look so dim. It is barely readable. Generally, it would look as clear as the date right here at the top. I think this is just a bug with iOS 26. And well, as a final display setting, let's get back here to the main page, then swipe down to accessibility, and right here on motion, let's swipe all the way to the bottom to disable or enable the frame rate limit. If you turn it on, the phone is going to work at 60 Hertz, which of course is going to be less fluid, less buttery, but it is also going to burn less battery life. Now, in my opinion, this is going to depend on how much you notice the difference, because some people don't really notice the 60 or 120 Hertz difference. And for those people, it is better to limit the frame rate and save battery life. But if you do notice the difference, I think you should turn it off and enjoy your buttery smooth phone, especially considering that is one of the reasons you bought such an expensive device, because it has 120 Hertz. But anyways, that being said, let's get back once again to the main settings page, swipe down to General, and swipe down to Keyboard. So first of all, I recommend you swipe down to all keyboards and disable the auto correction, which is going to automatically change the word you were trying to type, guessing the right one, which a lot of times is not really the right one and it pisses you off. And well, you can also choose to disable the predictive text, which is that layer at the top of the keyboard that shows the words you may be trying to type. And well, another very interesting you can do here is to tap on text replacement, then tap on plus, and then you can type a very long phrase. In this case, it doesn't really make any sense. It is just for demo, but you can replace essentially this very long phrase with a shorter phrase or even a word. In my case, I'm going to just type WQ. When you tap on save, there we go. We can automatically replace WQ, there we go, with that very long phrase. This is very helpful if you ever see yourself typing the same long phrase over and over and over again to the just different types of people. This way you can just type 2 letters and automatically fill in the entire phrase. But anyways, that being said, and once again here on the main settings page, let's now swipe down to action button, because I'm pretty sure many of you already knew, you can customize the action button that's right here on the left side at the top. So by default on your phone, it is going to be set to enable or disable the silent mode. So you can enable or disable by tapping and holding. But as you can see, there is a very long list of alternative options. In my case, I generally use the flashlight when I tap on the action button. Then you also have the voice memos, you can recognize music, you can translate, and very interesting, you can also create a shortcut to do essentially anything you want. There's actually a very funny video on YouTube of a guy that's pressing the action button, and automatically, thanks to a shortcut, he creates a chain of actions like his garage door opens, his blinds turn on, his coffee maker turns on, the lights of the living room. Like he does a lot of things. In this case, of course, it is going to be a lot more complex, and that would need a separate video. But if you like to tinker and do very specific things, this is a very interesting option to dive in and spend hours and hours trying multiple things. And well, that being said, and as you also probably know, on the right side we have a camera control button, so you can quickly open the camera and take a picture. Now, the problem most people have with the camera control is that, as you can see right here, when you grip it with a little too extra strength, this menu shows up, giving you the option to control the camera, which is something you could already do with the touch controls on the phone. So just for reference, in my iPhone 16 Pro, I actually had it turned off completely because I was triggering it accidentally all the time. It was really, really annoying. But thankfully, with the iPhone 17 and iOS 26, we have a way to fix the camera control. So let's tap once again on the settings, then swipe down to camera, tap on camera control, and right here on controls, you want to tap on customize and disable the light press. Once you do this, you'll still be able to tap to open the camera, tap to take a picture, which is genuinely useful, but you won't activate the weird contextual menu with a light press when you grip the phone. For that, you'll have to swipe down like this, which is something that's way harder to do accidentally. Now, additionally, also here on the menu, you'll be able to control the things you can do with that contextual menu. And in this case, if you don't really use it, I recommend you turn most of these options on besides the cameras. This way, of course, it is not going to be that useful, but it is going to be a lot faster because you can only do one thing. So this may be a way you can see yourself using the camera control. But anyways, that being said, let's now move on to a quick tip for your camera app. If you zoom in on any photo, you can actually tap right here on crop to instantly crop your photo to that specific zoom you've made. So you don't have to go to the settings, tap on edit, tap on crop, then crop the phone. You can just swipe and crop in a much easier way. Believe me, when you start using the cropping editing mode this way, you will not be able to go back. Now, moving on, another really cool feature on your Photos app is that you can actually grab text from any image. So in this case, this would be a specific image that I have on my gallery. And just like that, I can select a specific text that I want to copy. There we go. And then I can tap on copy. I can select it all, or I can even tap on the AI button that comes with every iPhone with Apple Intelligence and rewrite that text in a more friendly way. So in this case, let's read the Kanye West tweet from April 2018. You have the best ideas. Other people's opinions are usually more distractive than informative. Follow your own vision. Base your actions on love. Do things you love, and you don't absolutely love something, stop doing it as soon as you can. So let's actually replace this for a more professional tone. Your ideas are exceptional. While others' opinions may be distracting, they are often less informative. Trust your vision and base your actions on love. Engage in activities that you genuinely enjoy. And if you find yourself disinterested, discontinue them promptly. Of course, it is exaggerating the formal tone, but it is really nice to have this on the text selector and to be able to select text from images. And well, staying here on the Kanye West image I showed you before, if we take a quick screenshot by tapping on the volume button and the power button at the same time, you will have a bunch of new options that were not available last year. So, of course, you can crop the image, something you were able to do before on older iPhones. But now, as you can see, we have the option to ask the phone about this image. Let's tap on continue. And then we can tap any question we want using ChatGPT. We can also summarize the image or the text on the image. So let's tap right here, and it is going to summarize the information that's on the image. Although in this case, I think it's only summarized one of the tweets, or it's bundled everything into a small phrase. You can also read the page or the image out loud. So let's try it.
Inside of you. Do what you feel, not what you. Thoughts have been placed in our heads to make everyone assimilate.
As you can see, it's not perfect. It's not reading it in a very human way. But once again, it is really cool to have the option to read anything you see on your phone, on an image on your phone, by just tapping one button. I think it's really cool. But anyways, the main feature here on the screenshot menu is that you can also select with your finger any part of the image. There we go. And the phone is going to perform a search. In this case, you can choose between Google, Pinterest, or eBay. And it is going to give you information about that thing it's seen. So in this case, I've selected a Kanye West tweet. So it is going to show me more Kanye West tweets. Of course, if it's something you can buy, you can tap on Pinterest or eBay. If it's information-based, you can tap on Google. That is going to depend on the specific information that's on the image. But anyways, that is everything that I had for this video. I believe it is a very complete set of things to do on your new iPhone. If you have any questions regarding anything that I said, please tell me down below. And if not, I hope you had an amazing day, or keep having an amazing day, and I hope to see you again very soon. Peace.